Dialogue between DMs and players is one of the most important parts of running a good and fun D&D game. But sometimes the dialogue can be hard. Things are lost in communication. So, today on Tabletop Tavern Tips, I opened up a community post and had DMs submit things that they want to say to their players. So today, here's a little bit of advice. Things DMs love and things DMs hate that come straight from DMs in my comment section. Players in the audience, don't worry. Dear DMs, Sincerely Players is coming up next. With that being said, let's get started. It is extremely important when creating a character to create a character who would join a party. Your character can be compelling on their own merits, be a one-man killing machine like John Wick who wants to cut through every monster on their path like a hot knife through butter. Never mind what others think, and to whom going against a party dynamic is extremely in character. Hard agree on this one. I see this all the time. And it's not just making characters that are lone wolves. The best lone wolf characters are usually characters who learn to not be lone wolves anymore. Take Han Solo as the best example. His character arc is literally him learning to work with the rest of the cast. So it doesn't make much sense that all of these people who play lone wolves miss the biggest appeal of most lone wolf characters, that growth. And yeah, party dynamic is important. If your character ruins that dynamic, I don't really see the point of playing D&D. You're supposed to be working with the group. I mean, it's straight up selfish play if you decide, okay, I'm going to make a character that specifically does not work with the rest of the party and tries to hog the spotlight at all times and kill all the monsters on his own. Like, that's not fun. Usually, it's not all of those things all at once, but it's either a combination of a couple of those elements or just one of each. But each of those elements can create a problem on their own. Now, of course, if you do this, you're not a bad person. I find a lot of people who play lone wolf characters are often just people who are excited and are channeling some of their favorite characters from pop culture, which is fine. But make sure that when you're making a lone wolf character, you try to work them into the party dynamic. Make sure they have a reason to be there, because if there's no reason for them to be in the party, then there's no reason for them to be in the campaign. I want to see characters with a clear and distinct personality. A personality informs you about the character so much more than the backstory. When you think, who's Caduceus Clay? You don't think of some disease taking over a sacred grove. You think of a chill cow cleric that likes tea, can be a little dense, and cares deeply for his friends. When you have a personality outlined, it gets you in the mindset of someone else, and then they really come alive and make the game so much better for everyone at the table. Once again, hard agree on this one. Personality is really important. I am currently developing characters for a new campaign. My current campaign is wrapping up in about a month, and it's a lot to take in. I mean, this is basically the past 2 years of my life, which, yeah, it's a lot. But that aside, I'm making a lot of new characters for a new campaign with the same people. And these NPCs, when I'm writing them, the first thing I do is write personality. Just writing down a couple of adjectives about who they are. Like, for example, I'm writing a spy master type, independent rogue type character. The first thing I wrote down was stern and then religious. I thought that those two verbs for a rogue could be rather interesting. And from there, I built out a former paladin who realized that not all fighting needs to be done in the light. And I started building out this person, this character, and then I developed her backstory after I fleshed out her personality. Backstory can often come from personality very easily. It's much easier for me to write a backstory for a character, a long, involved backstory, when I already have who they are down in my notes. Of course, personality can also come from backstory. Instead, it can go reverse. When you're looking at the backstory of a character, you can determine what their personality is based on the events that happened in their life. And of course, different people will react to different events differently. Ginny D has a great video on this called How to Make a Personality, and it summarizes this principle very, very well. Though I do think that before you make the backstory, the personality can come first. And for me, it's always more comfortable for the personality to come first because the backstory ends up being better because I did it in that order. Ooh, this one's kind of tied in. If DMs ask for roleplay heavy characters, they want people with interesting backstories. This does not mean a strange race class combination and a generic backstory. This can be a fighter with a good backstory. Again, this one is really, really good. When you're making a D&D character, just making a gnome barbarian is not enough. That gnome barbarian needs to have some substance to them. Yeah, it's not stereotypical like a half-orc barbarian, but if someone writes a half-orc barbarian and puts a little bit of effort into drilling out what their motivation is and why they're coming onto the adventure, whereas the gnome barbarian is just like a joke, yeah, I'm gonna take the half-orc barbarian. Yeah, the gnome is more quote-unquote unique, but that doesn't mean anything if they're not interesting. Also, hot take I guess, nothing wrong with human fighters. There's never been anything wrong with human fighters. I don't get why people think there's something wrong with human fighters. I've seen people in my comment sections routinely crap on human fighters, like legitimately, not as a joke, I mean legitimately hate human fighters. Human fighters can absolutely be interesting if you put a little bit into their backstory and playing them out in game, especially from a story perspective. I mean, I don't get the hate for human fighters. Stop hating human fighters. If nothing else, take that away from this video. You are not the main character of the game. There are other people at the table who also want a choice to use their abilities. Yes, this is definitely another one that is very important to keep in mind. Players out there, try not to spotlight hog. It is very easy to do that, especially if you're a naturally charismatic person, not like a charismatic character, a charismatic person in real life. It sometimes is easy to accidentally control a room. When you're the loudest and you're talking the most and you're the most authoritative, people kind of gravitate towards silence and it pushes people out of the spotlight. In D&D, you don't want to do that, and it's not usually intentional. When I see spotlight hogs, it's not people going into D&D thinking, I'm going to ruin this game by not allowing anyone to play. No one does that. It's usually just someone who's very charismatic and naturally kind of falls into the spotlight, and it does happen. I've seen it happen where someone's speaking and everyone kind of quiets down and they're listening, and then this person keeps on talking and talking and talking, not really realizing what's going on. Or B, it's just someone who's really excited and in that excitement kind of tramples other players. Neither of those things are intentional, and both are the most common form of spotlight hog. Are there narcissistic people who are genuinely just very selfish and want to hold control of the game? Yes, but most people are just excited. When you see someone trying to be the main character of the game, just take them aside and tell them, hey man, here's what's going on. And depending on their reaction, then gauge if they should stay in your campaign or not. If you are a player, just assess if you are talking too much. Look around and think about who has talked in this situation. Am I pushing people out of the spotlight? Have I interrupted someone? And if you have interrupted someone, stop yourself and let them talk. It is always good courtesy just to check if someone else wants to speak. I'm not trying to imply that this is an easy thing to deal with. It's not, especially as someone who's kind of loud and talks a lot in real life. I'm very comfortable in D&D, very comfortable role-playing. I can trample people sometimes. I need to go out of my way to think about, hey, have I talked too much in this situation? Should I back off here? I mean, it is something that you have to think about, and it takes effort. But every little bit of improvement is a step in the right direction. So start now. Start thinking about who's talking in your game, because it is really important to having a good, healthy table. I can't believe I have to say this, but don't have your character attempt to do things severely triggering to other players. The other players are not about to relive past life experiences because you want good character drama. Yup, this is super important, probably the most important thing. This is real life stuff, and it is impossible to separate the fact that D&D is a social game. You are talking with people, real people with real lives. And if your actions in the game negatively affect those real lives, well, you might want to change those actions, because that comes first. D&D is a game. It is a game. It does not compare to the importance of someone's real life. Always have a session 0, and in that session 0, take a little bit of time to establish what people are okay with and what people are not okay with. It never hurts to ask. Whether you're playing with randoms or heck, if you're playing with friends, why not just ask? Hey guys, are you okay with this type of content in the game? Now, I'm not saying that you need to cater to every single thing that players say they are or are not okay with. Most things, I think you should take considerations. But for example, if I'm pitching a campaign and someone says, hey man, I'm not okay with character death. I'm sorry, I will talk to you about it and I will try to convince you, and I'm sure they will try to convince me, but I'm probably not going to budge. Character death is probably going to be part of this campaign. If you make silly decisions and don't play well and combat turns against you, then your character might die. That's just how it happens in D&D. It gives the game risk. And if someone pushes against me on that, I'm not going to get upset. That's their prerogative. If they're not okay with character death, that's fine, but we're probably going to split. And it goes the other way too. If someone tells me that they want me to allow them to describe graphic torture in this D&D game, I'll tell them no. And I'm not going to budge on that. I'm not going to get upset, but I'm not going to budge on that. If you want that to happen, I'm sorry, you're going to need to find another table. At the end of the day, the truth is, it's very hard to convince people of that kind of stuff, and usually the best course of action is to split. Though DMs out there, this does go for you. If you see something like a player is telling you, hey, I'm very arachnophobic, and you have just one spider encounter in your campaign, just change the spider encounter. Small things like that can be changed very, very easily. If you're running Curse of Strahd and there's a parent in the group who doesn't want violence against kids, and you have the bone saw windmill part, just take that out. It's not a big deal. It's an omission that is easily included into your campaign. Things like that, I think, should be considered by DMs. Players, please, 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 for the love of God, also take into account what people are doing. Before you make a decision at the table, just try to make sure that you know what is or is not okay at this table. That's what the session 0 was for. I don't think I need to say this to most people in the audience. You guys get this stuff. We've read RPG horror stories. We've seen what can happen, but this is still a really important rule. Alright, final one. I love creativity. I love a good story told amongst all of us. So please commit to roleplay as best as you can. I promise that this will make the game infinitely more interesting. And don't worry about failure. This makes the game even more fun in the long run. Okay, so I agree with this. I love roleplay, though there is a caveat for me. I don't push roleplay onto people, especially when they're new. I encourage them to commit to it, but not to a great degree. Like, I'm not constantly pestering them after every session where I noticed that they weren't talking much in character. And if I notice that this is going to be a continual trend, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with roleplay being not necessarily one-sided, but me playing a character and them basically just talking against themselves. That's fine. It's okay with me. I'm comfortable with that. Of course, if you're a player and you see on LFG that it's a roleplay heavy game and you come in not really wanting to roleplay, that is a decision that kind of confuses me, and maybe you should consider going to a different campaign if you don't want to roleplay, especially if the DM specifically requested roleplay in this campaign. Again, I do encourage players out there, try out roleplay, try speaking in character, try getting into it. It is really, really fun. There is nothing more enjoyable to me in D&D than interesting roleplay conversations. Yeah, combat's great, and I love seeing epic moments in combat, but the moments from my campaign that I've been running for the past 2 years, the moment that really sticks out to me is when I had a political discussion about the nature of power with the druid in the party in character. I was playing an NPC, she was playing her character, and we had a discussion about the nature of power in character. That was super, super cool. I love that moment. It is one of my favorites in the campaign and will always stick out to me. Those kind of roleplay moments are great. In short, try out roleplay, and if you're not comfortable with it, that is okay. But if you have the desire to maybe get into it, just start. Don't be afraid of failure. Like the commenter said, it is okay to not be good at something. You're not obligated to be good in something you're doing for fun. And hey, if you want to get better, then there's no better way to get better at something than weekly 4-hour sessions. Alright, and that is going to wrap up this episode of Tabletop Tavern Tips. If you guys enjoyed this episode and want to let me know, then please do hit that like button. If you want to watch more content from me, then please do hit subscribe and check out some of my other stuff. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or your own messages for players in the comments, then head down there and do so. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.